think we were really lucky to start off with Lions Bills, which it is a treat of a game. Tage, it could be a Super Bowl preview. I'm sure Lions fans and Bills fans would both love for it to be a Super Bowl preview. Let's start here with the Lions offense against the Bills defense. Lions offense, we've talked about how many times this year. Ben Johnson, obviously a top head coaching candidate this cycle for a reason. I think their offense is really special. It feels like when they have things moving, it's almost like weird when they don't score, which I think is a lot of fun. They can really attack you at every area of the field. They kind of manufacture space in the middle. They know how to combine, these motions that everyone's using. You can add layers onto it, whether it's a specific routes that you're using, whether it's turning like this fast motion into a double move. So I think there's a bit of creativity on top of it that again, special is the really, really right word for me to use here. And they just find ways to get guys running away from defenders. You have concepts where Goff is reading right to left. Everything like makes sense when you watch it. And I really like watching film with that. Like obviously we're not in the rooms with the quarterbacks, with the coaches, but you can watch it and say, all right, that just makes a lot of sense. Like the way that this play would be read out from one side to the other, where things are coming into Goff's vision. He's of course comfortable executing. So much to love for the Lions offense. I didn't even really talk about the run game at all there, which also is a lot of fun. What do you have here for the Lions offense?
Yeah, I'll talk about the run game here because we've talked so much about the Lions offense this year, as you mentioned. So just really want to dive into why the run game is so efficient for this team. Where you look at the Lions and FTN does a great job of charting run concepts, and you can see that they're primarily a zone running team. They have the third highest rate of using inside zone and outside zone rushes in the league. And they're really good when running duo, but they're not as great when running gap. And so, you can really see that like this team is going to want to run those inside zone, outside zone concepts, and they have two running backs that can really take advantage of those holes that open up when the offensive line is all flowing in one direction. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who has the seventh best rushing yards over expected in the league per next gen stats. You have David Montgomery, who is the type of player who he usually gets what's blocked for him, and is usually able to add on a yard or two after that as well. So I think that they both complement each other very well. And something that I think is really important for this team when looking at why they're so good at running these zone run concepts is a huge predictor of rush yards on a play is how fast the running back is hitting the hole at. And Jahmyr Gibbs has the fifth most 15 plus mile per hour carries in the league. So when he's getting to his top speed, he's getting to it early. He's able to hit the hole because of the way the offensive line is able to make space for him and able to create explosives off of those.
Gibbs really does move different. I've been really impressed with Montgomery as well this year. So both of them together. And when I think about just the run game in general, like I think the Eagles have a really top end run game. The Lions, I love that they can kind of attack every single gap like along the offensive line. So I think that if the defense wins in one direction, the running back is confident to cut back. A lot of times runs are able to kind of spring for huge gains when the backside of the defense is cut off. So you kind of push that front side, you cut that backside. That's what kind of creates your lane. And obviously, the running game is going to be through your offensive line. Like that is really important. The Lions, of course, have a really strong offensive line, but I think that they can really respond to every front that a defense throws at you. Whether you got five guys down there or you have six guys down there, they're able to create momentum. They're able to kind of use leverage. And I think that the small adjustments within their concept where it looks like, hey, they're just running outside zone, but you have it blocked up in five or six different ways. You add a tight end kind of with fast motion. Then whenever they get into gap stuff, it just feels like they are successful. So I think a lot to love for the Lions run game, a lot to love for the Lions pass game. Let's move on here to the team that has the unenviable task of trying to stop them. The Bills defense, where the Bills defense is coming off a really rough game against the Rams. I have enjoyed watching the Bills defense, I think, at times during this season. It feels like their pass rush that, spent some time like really looking at and praising Rousseau and everyone over there. It feels like over the last few games, maybe take like a slight step back. I always have to mention Christian Benford on the outside as well. I think Ben Johnson is going to tell us a lot about what he thinks about kind of what is the weak unit for this Bills defense. Where I really like when you take an offensive coordinator that you think is doing a good job, they're going to highlight really what I think the Bills' weak points may be. I thought the safeties really, really struggled against the Rams. So I'm interested to see what are the different ways that Johnson attacks there. What do you have for some of the numbers for the Bills defense?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said about the Bills defense, where because of the game that they just had against the Rams, they're now 10th in EPA per play allowed, which is a bit of a step down from where they were before the week. But, when you look at this Bills defense, they don't change a ton of their game plan week to week. Like they're going to sit in too high. Oftentimes they're going to play zone. They're going to play lighter on defense than the average team, like have an extra DB out there more often. And they almost always rush four. And so like you kind of know what to expect with this Bills defense, but the players are good enough and they're well coached enough to execute this scheme pretty well. Where you mentioned Greg Rousseau and Christian Benford, who are the two best players on the defense. You have some secondary pieces like Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver and Mike Edwards who can step up from time to time as well and just complement the defense. And then you also have Matt Milano coming back from injury and getting settled in this defense. So you're hoping that he can be a force multiplier for you down the stretch as he gets as he shakes off some of the rust. So like when you have the players that the Bills have on defense and you trust your coaching, like you can kind of sit in this too high zone world on the majority of snaps, rush for, don't blitz that much, but are effective when you can blitz. But like when you start to get burned, like you were in the Rams game, like that's where you'd like to see some of the game plan switch up more, just because like you just want to have some more diversity when your defense starts to get exposed a little bit.
The overall structures are certainly consistent in terms of four down rush. We're going to play zone. We're going to stay in that, light box. We're going to be nickel personnel a ton. Keep two eye safeties back. I will say, as a game plan thing, like there are, finding some small different tweaks. But again, that outside structure, like that is a predictable thing that it's coming. And I've said, I felt at times, certainly this year, that the Bills are the best team in football, a little bit because of how the defense was playing, certainly before that Rams game. But at the same time, in this type of matchup, the same way with the Ravens, when you're in that light box, I mean, man, the offense is really excited to see that. They're excited to take advantage of it, even when you roll a safety down. So it's not just like, quote, light. And even saying like, our safety rotating in just because there's six men in the box before the snap doesn't mean it's going to be a light box after the snap. Same time, like just like body types wise, just when the Lions get a little heavier, that's going to be, I think, something that I really look at. And that really feels like my best matchup for the offense, where when you have a heavy personnel running against that light defense, where the Ravens got on him really, really quick. It feels like a styles makes fights thing, where I think like that this can swing the overall matchup, where we'll talk about the Bills offense and just like what ceiling they have, if they even have a ceiling. But I do want to see what are the ways that you're able to, I don't know, create a tackle for loss at certain times. Is it going to be that Gibson Montgomery are just kind of running free, or you're able to kind of have so many openings just based on what you have up front? What do you have here for a positive matchup for the Lions offense against the Bills defense?
Yeah, so positive matchup for the Lions offense in this game is passing over the middle of the field. You look at the Lions, they have the highest rate of middle of the field passes in the league. You just saw this very recently against the Packers, where Goff was just ripping middle of the field passes. Did a great job of completing a lot of those. And the Bills ranked 28th in EPA allowed over the middle of the field this season. And so, I expect the Lions to attack that area as they like to do often. And when you look at who's been successful over the middle of the field for them this year, Amon-Ra St. Brown has obviously had the most targets and has had a 62% success rate when targeted in that area. And then Tim Patrick, who has been a pleasant surprise for this offense, has had 18 targets over the middle of the field and a 78% success rate. So I continue to look for him to continue to get targets in this offense. He had the 2 touchdowns last week, and I think that he's doing pretty well right now and will continue to get his fair share of targets in the offense.
I love the Tim Patrick shout. Certainly in the preseason episodes, just thinking about the Lions as a whole, we were really asking like who is kind of going to play that wide receiver 3 spot. So for it to be Tim Patrick, and yeah, like he is really producing. You see it every single Sunday. That has been really, really cool to see. Just like every additional weapon you have is so dangerous when the offense is going to be, funneled through the run game. It's going to be funneled through Amon-Ra St. Brown in different ways when you have guys like, I mean, you know how big of a Jameson Williams fan I am, but also like you got Tim Patrick. It's like, all right, well, I mean, how many people can we have to cover? Because even when we think about the Bills, like I'd love to see, Christian Benford have a great game, but at a certain point, like you're not gonna have enough guys to cover everyone. What do you think of just a fun matchup here that you're also looking for?
Yeah, fun matchup in this game will be Christian Benford when Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of lines up on the outside, where Benford is one of the better corners in the league this year. He has like I think a top 10 passer rating allowed when targeted, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know what he is. But one of the better receivers in the league, so that'll just be like a strength on strength. When St. Brown lines up outside, if you're Ben Johnson, you probably want to line him up in the slot more often, or in bunches to try to get him away from Benford and onto some of the other defensive backs. But that'll be a really fun matchup to watch when they're lined up against each other.
Yeah, I think the same with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's, of course, going to be lined up in the slot a ton. I'm excited to see all of the Teron Johnson, Amon-Ra St. Brown snaps from the slot because, I mean, the Lions, they're going to find ways to attack the safeties, whether that's you have Amon-Ra on the crosser and Jameson kind of coming behind him on a deeper in cut, just kind of the ways that you're going to test the middle of the field. But that specific matchup where Johnson, I think at times has been a slot that both of us really, really like. So I want to see where the Rams had success attacking the safeties. Are the Bills able to, I think, you find a different way, whether it's you're able to like boost your coverage in the slot, so your safeties, like the kind of coverage scheme just like looks a little bit different. Whether you're playing, you hopefully don't have to deal with the kind of jump balls to Nakua and to Cooper Cup in the same sort of way, but you're still gonna have to find ways to kind of constrict space. And maybe that starts if Teron Johnson's able to have a really good game in the slot. What do you think? Do you have any kind of fun matchups here you're thinking about from the defensive side?
Yeah, I mean the thing that I'm just gonna watch like holistically for the Bills defense is how well they do at tackling after the catch, where you have this Lions offense that is really good at yards after catch. That's kind of been a staple of them for the past couple of years now. And Next Gen Stats has the Bills as the second best team at not allowing yards after catch over expected. So once you adjust for where the pass is, where the defenders and receiver are located, like how much yards after catch are you allowing? The Bills have been really good at not allowing yak over expected, and so Lions are going to try to get a lot of it, and the Bills have been pretty good at defending it, and so that'll be fun to see if there's a type of play where the Lions are able to have a huge explosive off of yak, or if the Bills kind of put a dome on that and prevent it.
Yeah, I really like that because I think the Bills want to prioritize, hey, like throw the ball underneath, we're able to tackle you, we're in zone coverage, we're able to close windows. Those yards after catch, they add up so quick. They're able to create explosive. The Lions are so good at it, where it's the scheme, it's the receiver, it's the quarterback throwing the accurate ball, like all of that combined for the Lions. We see it so often. In this game, I'm excited to just see what the reps of the Lions tackles versus the Bills edge rushers look like. Is it that the Bills are not able to create pressure? Like, I mean, obviously every Penny Sewell rep is going to be a lot of fun to watch back and forth, but just seeing, are the Bills able to manufacture pressure in any sort of way? Of course, the Packers, you get some of that A gap blitz when Goff is under center. You have that drop back. It's a hard block for the center and the running back. If you're going to kind of split the A gap in two different ways, like from under center, now the running back has his steps in a different way when you kind of fan out. So that I think is something that I want to look at. Really, Tej, I feel like the game overall, just like what does the Bills zone coverage look like against what I feel like is the best zone coverage stressing team in the league, where they're going to have so many good ways to like pull your zones apart, where guys are going to be stretched in multiple directions. You're going to get high load. You're going to have people, running through your zones. Are you going to be able to pass things off? I'm really interested just to see overall if the Bills defense really can provide any sort of resistance. And I want to move on here to the Bills offense versus the Lions defense, starting with the Bills offense, who felt like it didn't matter what the resistance was against them, against the Rams. Of course, they have MVP favorite Josh Allen. Joe Brady, I think, has done a lot getting them into heavy personnel, taking like a bit off of Josh Allen's plate or kind of streamlining it in a few different ways. But then against the Rams, you still have the option to just break the glass in case of emergency, go full Josh Allen, generate a bunch of yards after the catch. Our guy Khalil Shakir had a bunch of really pretty reps of catching that ball on the run, getting up the field, splitting defenders, getting that explosive play. So a fun offense, I think, in a lot of ways, with really the MVP favorite, as I said. Again, what do you have here for the Bills offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a tough game for us to watch, just because Bill's Twitter, loves our series of text messages that we had with Sam Brookhouse, where we all just said Josh Allen at the same time. That gets retweeted on my account like every time Josh Allen is going off, which is very frequently. And I do want to like talk about him in general. Like, he is just playing quarterback at such a high level this year, and I know that's obvious, like, based on just watching the games, or looking at his stats, but just like the underlying things that he's doing so well is he's not taking sacks. He has the lowest sack rate of any quarterback in the league right now. He's been top 5 dropping back against both man coverage and zone coverage. So there isn't really like a coverage group that you can play to kind of mess with him. And he's also great against the blitz and not against the blitz. So again, it's tough to like figure out the amount of pass rushers that you should send at him. And so like he's clearly very comfortable in this iteration of the Joe Brady offense where they're using 6 offensive linemen a lot. They're really good when they have 11, 12, or 11 with an extra offensive lineman on the field. And Josh Allen just covers up for anything wrong that can happen in the offense, but also can elevate it when things are going right.
This season, it's been so fun to watch Josh Allen. It feels like he's really turning the dial to like the exact perfect spot where it's I'm gonna push the ball downfield. I'm not gonna have the boneheaded throws. I'm gonna take off when I need to. Like I'm not gonna just be taking sacks or kind of extending plays in sort of negative ways. And then how many examples do we get where his toes are right from the sidelines, then he rips the ball down the field? So I think playing at such a high level, I think is having the best quarterback season of anyone this year. I think that it's so fun to see this. I really wonder going forward, does it even out in some sort of way, whether it's next year? I hope he just maintains an absolutely elite level of play. I think everything there combined is really, really good. Where, I mean, looking like the Bills were not the favorites to win their division before this year.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the preview show. Like that is wild. And to think about where everything has fallen. Now, another one it's been really interesting to watch over the last few weeks, going over here to the Lions defense, where Aaron Glenn, he's piecing it together. You get Zadarius Smith in there, who I think he's been impressive. I think that Glenn has done a good job using him in a few different ways instead of saying, oh, just go to that, outside spot, go rush, kind of look like Aiden Hutchinson in a few different ways. Because when you think about some of the teams that Zadarius Smith has been on when he has been successful, you think about, Smith over the center, Smith over a guard, like really moving him around in different ways. And you're building the plan through him. I think that makes sense. Obviously, our guy Lee McNeil has been having a bunch of good weeks, so we're not going to miss a chance to talk about him there, and we're not going to miss a chance to talk about Brian Branch. So Aaron Glenn is going to continue to draw off those heavy blitzes on third downs. It feels like if you just struggle early against those, you're going to fall behind. You're not going to be able to catch up against this Lions offense, where against the Packers, obviously the Packers score a ton of points, but the Lions get you on a few of those blitzes early, and that really kind of pushes you behind in a few different ways. This matchup overall, I think it's just going to be fascinating when we think about Allen versus man coverage, Allen versus the blitz. What does Aaron Glenn kind of have overall, just as different pitches to throw when you're trying your best, really? I think behind that front. What do you have here for the Lions defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a lot of good points about the Lions defense there, where I am still so impressed with how this defense is performing, where they rank in efficiency metrics based on all the injuries that they've had, and what Aaron Glenn is doing to account for his lack of defensive linemen is he's just blitzing a lot, and this is something he's done before. I've always thought that Aaron Glenn is someone who has very creative blitz packages. He has certain blitzes where he'll try to send 2 guys through the same A gap, or kind of on a delayed blitz sometimes with some of his linebackers from the second level. And, a lot of them have worked out very nicely. And so he has the 4th highest blitz rate in the league right now. And they are the best team when blitzing, on an EPA basis. So it's very nice to see Glenn be able to dial up a lot of these blitzes when he has those types of players on the defensive line to account for just the talent disadvantage. But on the back end, I think you're seeing a very talented group for the Lions, where you have 2 safeties who might be all pros this year, and Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. You have some supporting pieces like Jack Campbell and Aleem McNeil, who've also been good as well. But there is one thing I want to ask you about, and it was Belichick going on the Pat McAfee show, and he brought up some concerns about the Lions defense. With like how when you play a lot of man coverage, when you blitz a lot, like you can run hot during these sequences, but like sometimes because of your play caller's history and kind of what this defense is talent wise, like there could be some regression to the mean eventually. Like, do you share those concerns with Belichick, or are you kind of thinking that this can be one of the top defenses in the league still?
Well, first of all, Bill Belichick, a potential UNC head coaching legend out there, just like wild news that I guess maybe we won't talk about as much next year just because of how much we're focused on the NFL. I do think there's a lot that is true there. And I mean, we've talked about it all year. Like Glenn's plan in a lot of ways is to lean into that volatility. Like you should lean into that variance, I think, because you're a unit that has just so many struggles up front, just in terms of health. Like I do think players are playing at a decent level up there, but you're I don't think you're comfortable playing a ton of zone coverage all the time, just based on everything there, based on how much of a pass rush you're able to get. Like we saw, like week one last year against the Chiefs, where Glenn pulls out just a bunch of zone coverage later in the season. You continue to move towards man coverage. I think you can only have that sort of plan when you're like the Bills, when you have four rushers that you feel more confident about, even though the Bills rushers have struggled a little bit. So I absolutely think you can run Colt. Like you absolutely can. But again, think about the Packers game. It took like 3 or 4 third downs for LaFleur to get to some of those kind of quicker
Mhm.
underneath answers. So it really is incumbent on an offense. Like you can't punt. Like you can't go on those first 2 third downs. You know what's coming. It's gonna be like a tight man coverage. It's gonna be a blitz situation. You got to feel comfortable kind of with the route concepts that you have. Obviously, for a team like the Bills, you can feel more confident just because Josh Allen is going to be able to, sometimes just erase an entire defender. So I think those concerns are absolutely valid. At the same time, like the Lions, where I think at the start of the season, like they had potential, like to be kind of a top end unit just because of everything really coming together. It's hard for me to say it just because of all the injuries. I still feel confident in Aaron Glenn and what they're able to do. I think we'll see kind of a game where they really run cold. I just like think the offense is going to be able to kind of make up for that. So I guess I'm comfortable with the plan overall, but I think a real concern there just in terms of kind of what is still left over in Detroit. And Tage, that kind of brings me to what I feel like is a positive matchup for the Bills, like running those underneath routes against man coverage with a guy like Khalil Shakir. Like, who's going to be able to keep up with them? Are you going to be able to have situations, whether it's Arnold on the outside against Amari Cooper, where you're able to generate pass interferences?
Yeah.
I felt like against Kansas City, you get comfortable kind of throwing to the outside when you have those types of situations. So like I'm excited in like the cut up after the game to look at like all the kind of just man coverage reps of the Lions against the Bills. What is Brady's plan of attack? What are, who's keeping up with the crossers? Is it Brian Branch cutting a crosser off from the opposite side? I think that's just going to be a lot of fun to watch. I feel like that's a situation where the Bills should be able to get the advantage there. So I think that's something that I am looking forward to. What do you think here? Just a positive matchup for the Bills offense against the Lions defense.
Yeah, I do think in this game, like the Bills will have the advantage when the Lions do play some zone, and they are primarily a man coverage defense, but they do play zone sometimes, obviously, just to switch it up. And there is a fall off in the efficiency allowed when they switch from man coverage to zone coverage. The Bills rank fifth in EPA per play versus zone. A big reason of this is Khalil Shakir sees a target share bump when facing zone coverage. So does Kincaid and James Cook. Keon Coleman almost becomes a non-existent factor. When the Bills are seeing zone coverage, he's obviously very good against man coverage. So if the Lions do play some zone in this game, expect Shakir and James Cook to have some targets. Just because of the usual type of passes that the Bills have when they're facing zone.
Tish, it feels like we're also really lucky here where we have Khalil Shakir and Brian Branch, guys that we always I feel like go out of our way to mention. Is that what you have as your most fun matchup on Bills offense versus Lions defense?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's gonna be the most fun matchup to watch. And we are the Khalil Shakir podcast, like we've been talking about him for a long time now. I think we're kind of there with Brian Branch as well, where we talked about him a lot
Look, I
last year
was
and
there,
into
Tish.
this
I
year.
was I
Yeah.
was spitting out the
So
Brian Branch DPOY stuff. Come on, I
yeah,
can't get
yeah,
I
you
can't
were
have my
you were
Brian
very
Branch
early on Brian
credentials
Branch.
checked
Yeah.
at the door right now.
So I mean, both of those guys getting matched up against each other, it's like picking between our two favorite kids.
But you always have a favorite, right? Yeah, I really want to see all of just the ways that the Lions match Buffalo's heavy looks. Of course, Joe Brady has done a good job of, as we talked about on this episode, as we talked about before. You throw that six offensive lineman on the field, it can boost you in the run game. It can force the defense to do funky things. I remember all those plays against Jacksonville where Buffalo just has guys running wide open because it is hard to deal with that in certain ways. And Detroit is going to be, I think, happy to be heavy on the defensive side at times, even with some of their injuries. I'm excited to see just what pieces you plug in there. I'm also, Tage, like every time Josh Allen scrambles, like for some teams, when the quarterback is holding on to the ball, you start to feel uneasy. You're like, oh man, like it probably was a route concept that didn't have anything there. You're not sure what's going to happen. For Allen, it's absolutely the same, but you just like don't know what's going to happen. I think in the positive direction. I feel like you're against man coverage, they're so good at it. I feel like against the blitz, Allen is so good at it. So now you're playing against a team that has man coverage and the blitz combined. That is going to be fun. I'm also really excited for this Darius Smith versus Dawkins and Brown reps. I think
Mm.
those are going to be fun just on the outside. Dawkins, I thought, had a really good day against Jared Verse, who is like a power rusher, obviously. Just so you have to be ready, I think, for that kind of rush. I think Darius Smith has a lot of moves in his bag as well. So overall, I think will be a fun matchup. I feel like I lean towards the Lions in this game. Obviously, it's easy to say. Like the Lions, I think I'm sure they're favorites. They're obviously at home as well. I think even just from a stylistic perspective, thinking about the Bills defense matching up against the Lions offense, thinking about the Lions defense, really like you just got to get Josh Allen, I think, once or twice. Where I mean, Allen could be perfect though. So that is, I think, a really, really hard thing. And that makes it, I think, all the more fun where you could absolutely have another just crazy, crazy high scoring game. I think I'd be relatively surprised if it didn't reach that sort of height, thinking about just all of the players on these offenses. I'm not sure if you agree there.
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree with you. Like there should be some adjustment made for the Lions kind of playing on Thursday night, having the mini bye to get a little bit healthier, get extra rest, and playing at home. Whereas the Bills were, traveling cross country, have another away game in Detroit this week, and have like a rest disadvantage. So you can definitely adjust the spread to make up some points for the Lions there. Like if they end up playing in the Super Bowl. This game would be very close to a pick 'em or probably shaded a little bit to Detroit. But just overall, like it's going to be a great matchup to watch this time. And then, you have to hope that we'll see it again later on this season.
It's going to be a real, real fun one.